Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to see so many curious minds gathered here today. Namaskar, I'm Vipasha Rathore, your host for the evening. And what an evening this will be. We're set to learn, grow along with you, and we're also going to be letting you all on a big announcement towards the end. We're all about to embark on a journey that I believe holds the key to unlocking a deeper, more meaningful, and ultimately a more effective way of learning, the project-based learning. Now, when we think of learning today, what comes to our minds? Textbooks, lectures, memorization, endless streams of theoretical concepts? We've largely embraced a system that, for all its merits, often prioritizes information absorption over practical application. But let's pause for a moment and go back in time to the ancient learning traditions of our very own land. Now imagine a Gurukul nestled in the serene lap of nature. What was the core of their pedagogy? Was it endless hours spent poring over scrolls in isolation? While scriptures and philosophical discussions certainly played a role, the essence of education then was deeply rooted in learning by doing. Now, consider a young student learning Ayurveda. They weren't just reading about herbs, they were identifying them in the forest, preparing medicines, and assisting treatments. An apprentice sculptor wasn't just studying schematics, they were shaping clay, carving stone, and understanding the nuance of their craft through direct engagement. Knowledge was not merely acquired, it was lived. Skills were not just memorized, they were mastered through iterative practice and real world application. Today, we'll explore how we can bridge this gap between the traditional bookish learning we often experience and the profound experiential wisdom of our past by embracing the power of project-based learning. Let's discover how we can transform passive recipients of information into active creators of knowledge and innovators of solutions. Let's learn how to bring the doing back into our classrooms. And to help us in our journey, we have with us Dr. Zachary Linnert, Learning and Development Manager at Britannica Education, where he designs professional learning experiences that empower educators to create meaningful, student-centered classrooms. With over 20 years of experience as a teacher, school leader, executive coach, consultant, Zachary has led initiatives ranging from opening new campuses to launching literacy and SEL programs, boosting enrollments, and cultivating a strong staff culture. He brings deep expertise in project-based learning, shaped by his time integrating PBL in the Reggio-inspired elementary school in New York. He's co-led a summer program grounded in PBL and supported school-wide adoption as a division leader. He has also conducted numerous PBL trainings and has co-authored Britannica's in-person asynchronous PBL workshop development program. He's recently defended doctorate in entrepreneurial leadership in education at Johns Hopkins University, where his work centers on creating sustainable, equity-driven change in schools. We welcome you, Zachary. Thank you so much for being here with us, Dr. Linnert.
Thank you, Vipasha, and Namaskar, India. I have to tell you, I don't know where I'm more nervous, defending my doctorate or joining you and so many participants today. I keep seeing the numbers of participants tick up, and I'm thrilled that we are here together across so many time zones. I'm in Chicago, Illinois right now, where it is 5:30 in the morning, and it is well into your day in India. And again, I'm thrilled to be a part of this. And if you do have colleagues that are still hesitating to jump on, invite them to come in. We're going to have a very interactive session today. uh, where I want you to get involved in the chat. There are going to be opportunities during the session for you to offer some insights. And I also have to say, as you probably have seen our social media blasts, I can be a little silly and a little fun, and I invite you to join me in finding the joy, the humor, the rich opportunities that can come out of project-based learning. So with that, Vipasha, may I kick us off and share my
Absolutely.
screen?
Can't
Lovely.
wait.
And I will not forget to share my sound. Give me 1 second.
We'll take a moment to thank all the attendees who've joined us. We are just moments away from reaching a 500 mark on the attendees. It's so amazing to see that all of you have joined us here today to learn and grow along with us. Zachary, all yours.
Wonderful. So, project-based learning. What is it? Why would we consider it? How do we do it? These big fundamental questions that we hope to answer and grow some excitement, some understanding in why, as Vipasha kicked off, why this is not a new pedagogy, why this is not something, a fad or something that we see as a recent trend. No, it is a deep approach to learning that goes back centuries.
And while we explore that, Zachary, it'll be great if we could have the screen in a full screen mode.
Yes, thank you.
We'd love to see the entire
Let me,
screen up here with us.
yes, actually.
And it is so heartwarming to see everyone joining in. We're well beyond our 500 mark. Looking forward to this amazing interaction.
Give me 1 second to resolve that. Thank you, Vipasha. I appreciate that.
We've actually already started seeing some amazing comments which are coming onto chat. We have Dr. Kavita who's talking to us and telling all of us that project-based learning is an active learning approach where students learn by actively investigating and responding to complex real-world problems or questions over an extended period. It's a departure from traditional teacher-centered methods. I think we're going to have such an amazing discussion today with everyone. Let's keep the chat going. We'll have a lot of activities, as mentioned by Zachary. I'll also take a moment to introduce Miss Laurie Lynch. She has graciously accepted to join us. She's Vice President of Professional Learning at Britannica Education, and she will be supporting us through the entire workshop. Laurie, thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure, and I'm always excited to support all of us here at Britannica and to support Zachary, and particularly as my colleague. So really excited to be here and excited to answer some of the questions we have today.
Amazing. Zachary, we can see it all in full bloom now. Thank you.
Wonderful. Yes. So thank you for introducing Laurie. This is my boss, Laurie Lynch, the Vice President of Professional Learning. She has a very important job today. She is going to be in the chat. She is going to be responding. She's going to be helping me facilitate your rich comments as we go along. And so she may pop in. We may hear her voice from time to time as well. So Laurie has a very critical job of keeping this interactive, which is what my hope is, that we can generate some buzz, some vibes in the chat today. So do feel free to jump in, offer some thoughts, and before we kick off with our first interactive activity, I wanted to share with you, this is a resource that we have for you with many of the items that we are going to be referencing during today's session. If you scan that QR code, it will take you to a PDF, and all of the items that you see on there are hyperlinked, and they will take you to many of the resources that we have pulled in to our presentation today. So I will share that QR code again later in the session in case you miss it. No worries, fret not, but let's go. So let's kick off. Let's get our brains going. Let's spark some juice here. In the chat, if you could please drop a word, phrase, emoji, if you're on a mobile device, that captures what it's like when learning is deep, authentic, or transformative, whether for you, because you're still learners, or your students. And then if you could also help us know who's in the room with us today by putting your role.
Amazing. We're starting to see a lot of comments coming in. Komal ma'am has mentioned energetic. We have Nidhi Mehrotra ma'am telling us exciting. We have Max and Wen. Interestingly, that's a light bulb. So there's we're having a light bulb moment as well. We have Pushpendra Mishra, who is inquisitive with an emoji, and there's a wow and aha. There's a smart emoji, satisfying and exciting. That's Renu Bala for you, Zachary. We do have a lot of comments coming in. Thank you so much, everyone, for being so engaging. So we have engaging, creative, exploring, curious, challenging. Oh, I think enthusiastic, curiosity, engaging is coming up as a constant.
This is great. This is what we want to hear. This is when we think of project-based learning, many of these words are the words that we would like to see, that we hope to see, that we strive to see in classrooms that are buzzing when project-based learning is the approach and it is the foundational design for rich learning. Any other words coming in, Vipasha? Anything of note?
We have Ratna Srinivas ma'am, who is telling us exciting and spark in the eyes. She's an academic head. We also have Shifali Egbert, miss from Somerville School in Greater Noida. She's just joyful at the moment. Twinkle Joshi is intellectual. Chavi Srivastava is experiential. So we have lots coming up for us. This is going to be amazing.
Great. Now, keep those words in mind as we continue. Keep those words in mind because you're going to hear them again and you may hear some new words. But let's level set. Let's actually understand what we're talking about. We hear the word project, right? In project-based learning. And so we think, obviously, we've done projects. We grew up doing projects. We have projects that we do with our students. So why is this different? What is different? We hear project-based learning, we hear problem-based learning. What does that mean? So take a minute. What kind of projects did you do as a student? What types of projects have you had your students do? And what were some of the successes and some of the challenges as a teacher and student, particularly in the projects that you have done or that you do now? I know a quick story for you, and then Vipasha, as the answer or the responses are coming in, I would love to hear what individuals have put. But when I was a student, I still remember to this day, we had a task of taking a coffee can and figuring out the mechanisms within the coffee can so we could roll it and have it come back to us. I distinctly remember sitting in my garage with a coffee can, rolling and rolling, hours upon hours, trying to get this coffee can to roll back to me. A project that stands top of mind. Any others that are coming in?
Yes, we have quite a few that have come in. So a lot of our educators are focusing on hands-on activities, which lead to experiential learning and build real understanding. They're also focusing on projects that are inquiry-based, promote inquiry-based learning. We have application-based models, building a model of a sustainable city, connections with real world, with their daily life. We have a lot of activity-based learning also coming in. And Zachary, I'm going to take this moment to also share something that that I used to do as a student.
Great.
We as kids were making projects around using plaster of Paris, and we were building volcanoes, and learning about volcanic eruptions. We did one project which was more about putting up a garage sale to learn how to earn money and sell products that we had already used, be it books, toys, interesting things that even we used to do back in the day when we were students. But we do have some of the educators posting that they are focusing more on working models to be created, performance-based activities like drama quiz. Um, we also have some math activities which are done to model problems and come up with solutions. Develop writing skills by creating poems, songs, short stories based on research or personal experiences. Pushpender Mishra sir says that my student make a working model based on trigonometry table. Very interesting. Some of us have worked with schools to develop tech skills in primary students. This is Sunitha Nambiar Miss, who's shared with us. Math wonders using hands-on crafting and fun game activities. So a lot of investigative, application-based, activity-based experiences that are coming up on the chat. An interesting one shared by Dr. Kavita, investigate local environment issues, purpose solutions like creating water filtration systems and conducting waste management studies.
Wonderful, wonderful. So we are primed and ready. We, even Vipasha, your story, they can evoke strong emotions in us. And why are these moments memorable? Even if they don't necessarily follow the definition of project-based learning, what is truly memorable about these experiences that we have had as learners in projects? What makes it so memorable? Well, we're going to watch a little video that's going to help us understand what truly it is about hands-on learning, inquiry, student-driven inquiry, wonder, room for exploration, for the iterative nature of learning. Vipasha mentioned that at the beginning. What really is it? And then ultimately, how is it different from just doing projects?
Imagine walking into a classroom where students are buzzing with excitement. They're solving real-world problems, asking meaningful questions, and working together to create something extraordinary. This is the essence of project-based learning, or PBL. PBL has deep historical roots. Thinkers like Confucius, Aristotle, and Socrates emphasized learning through doing, inquiry, and discussion. Over time, pioneers like John Dewey and Maria Montessori built on these ideas, creating approaches that emphasize hands-on, student-driven learning. Today, PBL is a powerful way to engage students in meaningful, authentic education. So, what makes project-based learning project-based learning? Let's explore the features that set it apart. The first feature is learner-centered design. PBL positions students as partners in their learning. They have the power to make choices and use their voices, creating a personalized experience. Teachers provide scaffolding and differentiation to ensure all learners have access to the project. This approach keeps students engaged, motivated, and in control of their learning journey. The next feature is inquiry-based learning. Curiosity drives the process. PBL starts with open-ended questions or challenges that inspire students to ask their own questions. These inquiries guide their work, fostering critical thinking and building essential skills like persistence, empathy, and creativity. Next, PBL is collaborative. Teamwork is essential. Students learn to work interdependently, sharing ideas, solving problems, and building relationships. Along the way, they develop self-awareness, social awareness, and the ability to communicate effectively. Collaboration not only strengthens their projects, but also prepares them for the future. Another key feature is authenticity. In PBL, learning is real. Students connect their work to real-world problems or experiences that are meaningful to them. This makes their learning more motivating, supports deeper understanding, and shows them how their efforts can make a difference outside the classroom. The next feature is feedback and revision. In PBL, the process is just as important as the product. Students engage in a continuous cycle of feedback, reflection, and improvement. They learn to embrace mistakes, deepen their reflective practices, and refine their work. This feedback loop mirrors how professionals address challenges in the real world and help students develop a growth mindset. Finally, there's the public product. PBL culminates in a solution, product, or performance that's shared with an audience beyond the classroom. This might be their peers, community members, or even industry experts. By sharing their work, students connect their learning to the real world, practice essential skills, and gain valuable feedback. The features of learner-centered design, inquiry, collaboration, authenticity, feedback, and a public product are what make PBL such a transformative approach.
Okay, in the chat, what words showed up for you? What did you hear that is still buzzing in your mind? Or did something stand out? Now you have a new question, something that you want to know more about. Any responses to the video?
Learner-centric, collaborative,
Learner-centric.
authentic learning, public product, inquiry-based, based on critical thinking, problem-solving, communication, collaboration, creativity, all vital for success in today's world. Process is important.
Ooh, nice.
Inquisitive, feedback and reflection, self-paced, and hands-on experience, real-life application. We also have how somebody tell us how it helps students to be collaborative, build relationships, which is very interesting.
Wonderful. Okay, as we keep going, I will be curious to hear if anything changes, deepens, or if the more nuanced understanding of project-based learning starts to evoke some questions about how do we do this? What does this look like? How can we take learning that might look more traditional and shift it towards project-based learning? So in a typical approach where we're doing a project, we may see something linear that looks like this. Our classrooms, our units, et cetera, may look like what we see here. We have a lecture, we do an activity, there's a quiz, and everything is very much step-driven as we try to culminate in a project that comes at the end. Often at the maybe after an exam or potentially maybe in place of an exam, but everything builds towards this final moment and then the project. So the project, in a way, becomes a dessert, as we like to hear later, and we'll see that in the next slide. Oh, I keep seeing the chat coming in. First, let me just thank you. You are interactive and ready to join us today. We were wondering how responsive our participants are going to be, and you have shown up today. So thank you so much. Let's keep going. So if we take that linear model and we flirt with it a little bit, we still see that we are moving along, right? There are still sequences in project-based learning that can feel similar to doing a project, except the project is woven in throughout. And rather than it being this, then this, then this, there is, as Vipasha mentioned, an iterative approach that's happening. We see these moments where we can stop and we have a reflection, or we give feedback, or we start again, or we invite expert opinions, and we bring outside expertise in. And that iterative nature moves us away from a this, then this model where the teacher is the source of knowledge. And we put the exploration and the finding of information into the hands of the students. And we also empower whatever resources we have in our community to bring in expert levels knowledge as well. This may be partnering with a local community, a local organization. This may be activating a network that we have, and we can have video discussions with experts across the world, particularly in the topic that we are exploring. So we move away from this direct linear model into a little bit more of an iterative, cyclical, slightly, maybe for those of us for whom this is new, a slightly uncomfortable kind of chaos, where we send off as a teacher and we are facilitator. We are keeping everybody in the bus and we are moving along, but we are not necessarily the sole driver. And a critical piece in project-based learning that we're going to talk about at the end is feedback, reflection, and assessments. There is deep, rich opportunities to assess what your students have learned, where they're going, what maybe gaps you have that you can fill in or you can help build up, and then also what students are learning about themselves through self-reflection, peer reflection, etc. And then at the end, we culminate with that public performance. But that doesn't mean that that's an add-on, or that doesn't mean that's the treat at the end. That means that's what we are working towards, which is why we move away from doing a project, which is like dessert, right? The main course, the learning, everything has already happened, and we have this somewhat sweet treat, if you will, at the end. Versus thinking about it as the main course, everything is designed around it. So if we have any chefs in the room today, you often build a menu with your main course in mind. And out from that, you work on all of the other courses. That is the idea of project-based learning here, is we start with that core and we build out, as opposed to we do it at the very end or the dessert. So when we think about the definition of project-based learning, we at Britannica have distilled the research down to 4 main ideas that are critical to the definition of project-based learning. And these are the 4 that we have here. And you've already said many of them. I mean, actively engaging was a word many of you put in the chat, and that is the one we see right above the red circle, actively engaging. And I have to tell you a little secret. It's not just actively engaging for your students. You as an educator, I'm telling you, I've seen it and I've experienced it, equally get engaged, particularly because you see the buzz that happens. That is infectious. Your students, interest peaks. You want to be there with them, alongside them. You too will probably learn, depending on what the topic is, in ways that you never could have imagined, because depending on the number of students you have in your room, they are going off in all of these different directions and coming back with this rich information that you could have never gathered solely on your own. Plus, there's a real world context. It directly applies to something in the real world. And that is a critical piece of project-based learning. And then moving slightly connected to that, it's personally meaningful for the students. And there will be a moment later where we're going to challenge and apply our thinking and what this means for our learners to have it be personally meaningful. How do you take aspects of the government or water scarcity or global warming? How do you make this personally meaningful for our students, and how do you make it relevant? That is a challenge, but once you crack that code and there are tools to help you, your students are hooked. So we've got a little quiz here, little game, and that game is basically yes or no. I am going to read a phrase, and Lori, my counterpart, is going to put those phrases in the chat. And if you think that that phrase is part of project-based learning, or yes, that is part of project-based learning, just put the word yes in the chat. If you think it's not part of project-based learning, just put the word no. We'll do a sample one. Is a vehicle that drives crucial skills and content. The vehicle driving crucial skills and content. Yes, that's project-based learning, or no, it is not project-based learning.
Yes, we're getting a lot of yes. Wow.
Yes,
Yes.
that is part of the understanding the definition of project-based learning. Let's keep going.
Woohoo!
Problem-based learning. Problem-based learning.
Oh, we're seeing a mix. No, yes, yes, no, 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 yes, 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 yes. I could go on. This is fun.
Okay. So, and you're absolutely right to think, well, wait a minute. They talked about a complex problem or issue. So yes, it is problem-based learning. And we put it in the no camp. So for those of you that put or voted no, don't worry. It was meant to be a little tricky. But problem-based learning means that there is an actual problem. Project-based learning is broader. There are complex issues. There might be a driving question. Problem-based learning seeks to work towards a solution, which is an aspect of project-based learning, but it's not the sole reason or the sole direction. So we expand it and we say, at the core of project-based learning, there's a complex issue or a driving question. And we'll have an example of that in a little bit. Okay, let's keep going. Oh man, I ruined it. Project-oriented learning, definitely a no. So we'll go ahead and reveal that one. Project-oriented. Again, project-oriented learning is that idea of it coming at the end or the dessert, if you will.
Zachary, you gave us the answer, so it's
I
a no.
did.
We do have Nirja Agarwal Miss telling us, well, that depends on the rubrics.
Oh, high five to you. Yes, let us, when we get to the assessment section, you'll see where rich rubrics as part of that iterative feedback loop can really deepen our understanding of our students, what they're learning, et cetera, and maybe where we need to make some shifts. So,
And Zachary, I just wanted to also add another question for you to be thinking of is,
yes,
how can we ensure that every student is equally engaged in contributing? I think oftentimes we recognize that there are those students who stand back a bit and are a little less engaged, but they're often the deepest thinker in the group. So, and sometimes they surprise us and come up with a lot of solutions to whatever it is that they're engaged in. So anyway, just planting that seed as a question to follow through on.
When we get into, in this first section, when we think about the what and why of project-based learning, we are going to briefly talk about how this project-based learning offers levers of equity. Knowing our students is a critical component of project-based learning being lever of equity. And engagement looks different per student. So Lori, thank you for bringing that up. When we get into the section about equity, please remind me to talk a little bit more about this. All right, let's keep going.
All right, here's the next one.
Connected to the outside world, real world application and or personal context. Yes, that is project-based learning. No, it is not.
We're seeing a lot of yes.
Wonderful. Yes, that is connected to project-based learning. What about being grounded in iterative elements? Grounded in iterative elements.
Yes. No. No. Yes. It's a mix.
And here's the best part about what we're doing is for many of us who may be new to project-based learning, or we're still working through the delineation between doing a project, project-based learning, problem-based learning, inquiry, et cetera. We have all these terms. Yes, it's okay that we're still teasing this out. That's why we decided to do this activity. Yes, that iterative element is a critical part of project-based learning. Okay, a one-day activity. Yes, project-based learning. No, not project-based learning.
Lakshmi ma'am clearly says no. We have a lot of no's that have come in. One day is not a project-based learning.
No. Okay. Oh, I skipped it again. I get so eager. Engages an outside audience. Yes, that is part of project-based learning. What about an end of unit assignment?
End of unit assignment, everyone. Oh, we have a mixed response, but now no is taking over. No, no, no,
Good.
no.
Yes, no, again, we're weaving it through. Homework. Project-based learning is homework.
Project-based learning is homework. No.
No, that's correct. What about emphasis on collaboration with peers, with the community, with stakeholders, with guidance from our teachers?
That's an absolute yes that we're seeing.
Absolute yes. Teacher is facilitator.
Teacher as a facilitator. Absolute yes again. Hands down.
Absolute yes. Wow, we're cooking with gas here. And student inquiry drives learning.
Student inquiry drives learning. Hands down yes again.
Yes. You all did very well. Very well. Congratulations. Let's keep going. So project-based learning is not a fad. It is the foundation for student learning. And there are many benefits, and we've included these in the resource document that we gave you, all of these articles. I'm just going to show them very quickly. There's no need to go through all of the rich research that justifies why project-based learning offers so many benefits, but you can see just 4 studies here that talk about technological skills, communication, problem solving, cognitive, social, and self-empowerment for our students, and even academic areas, time management, test scores, motivation, enthusiasm. Lots of research-based proof that project-based learning offers tremendous benefits for our students. Like I mentioned earlier, there's some levers for equity in project-based learning. When we think about inclusive education, like Lori mentioned, that rich comment that talked about knowing our students and how do we meet the needs of all of our students. There are 4 key ways in which project-based learning offers levers of equity or normalizing or offering a baseline way in accessibility for all of our students. And the 4 are listed here. Knowing our students. This is about authentic ways in which we get to know our students, their families, their communities. And it's connecting them to historically accurate and inclusive curriculum. And it weaves in using feedback to give us a lens into our students. The cognitive demand, it's about providing rigorous challenge, right? And appropriate support for all students, all learners, regardless of their abilities. And it offers complex and intellectual work for all of them. Obviously, literacy is a huge lever of equity, providing implementation of activities that boost reading levels, vocabulary, communication skills, etc. And it scaffolds it so that they can engage in reading, writing, presenting, and speaking in front of a purposeful audience with a clear direction, intention, and mission. And then obviously we saw this in the video, it shares the power and it shares the instructional approach and it becomes more learner-centered. And this, as a broad idea, connects with the national education policy in India, where there's a direct connection between this idea of inclusive education, which is at the foundation of project-based learning, and the national education policy. And I pulled the quote there so you can see directly in the National Education Policy 2020 evidence that this idea of knowing our students, inclusive education, foundational to project-based learning is rich, alive, and actually necessary for India based out of the National Education Policy. And really just as a foundation, when we think about Maslow and student needs, we start with this baseline understanding of physiological needs, food, water, et cetera, and we move up to self-actualization. This is where they feel empowered, they feel recognized for their contributions, and they should feel accepted. This is where they learn to challenge what they've learned. they modify it, they morph it, they represent it, and they engage in purposeful debate where they get to showcase what they've learned. We build up this pyramid, and project-based learning lives at the top of this pyramid.
Zachary,
Again,
this is such an important part. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there,
please.
but I love to talk about Maslow's hierarchy, as you know. And so this is such an important part to leading into what you just said, where project-based learning is at the top of this pyramid. And we, as educators, and creating that atmosphere in our classroom, when students feel safe and seen and heard and belong and are encouraged and empowered, that is when we see them truly thrive in the project-based learning environment. Because as we create that space where we see each student as an individual and provide them those physiological and safety needs, then they become more active in what we're doing in the classroom. And it makes it easier for us to be those facilitators, because we as educators are taught to be the leader of the classroom, the driver of all things, and stepping back and allowing students to lead and drive is often uncomfortable for us as teachers. So this is a lovely, lovely part of what we talk about here in just developmentally appropriate practice in general, is if we are empowering our students in the classroom, they are more active and participatory in those project-based learning environments. So thank you again for putting Maslow in here, because again, one of my favorite things to talk about as well.
Absolutely, Lori. Thank you for jumping in. And I do, before we move on, want to thank Vipasha and Lori for being part of this team to facilitate the chat, offer some thoughts, etc. Project-based learning, like we have said, is really shared. It's not one person. I am not the sole knower of project-based learning. What we are demonstrating here in our collaborative teamwork is representative of the type of collaboration that can happen in a room that is buzzing, a school that is alive with project-based learning. Very quickly, like Lori was saying, this taps into students' funds of knowledge. Everyone has different funds of knowledge, things that they are knowledgeable about that come from their family, their culture, their experiences, etc. And each child has their own set of funds of knowledge, and project-based learning taps into the wide variety of those funds of knowledge, which is why we wanted to capture that sentiment here. Again, this resource is in the document if you would like to know more. I told you I'd bring back the QR code. So in case you missed it, this is a resource for you that has all of the references that we've made, some videos, etc. So scan that QR code. You'll have links to these 4 resources as well as the other ones that we have brought into today's presentation. So scan that and you will have access to all of those. Okay, so let's do a little application. It's been a little while since we've been in our chat. Let's think of we have a theme. Our theme is water scarcity. Okay, we know we have an issue here, a complex issue, this idea of water scarcity. And let's say we have to teach this. In a perfect world, it would be great if we could let our students choose the topic, but we can't, right? Let's say this is what we have to teach, but we can still make it all of those four key components of the definition of project-based learning. We can still take a theme and hit on those 4. So let's challenge ourselves here. From the perspective of your students, how is this topic relevant to their lives? Now, we're not going to spend a ton of time because we still have some aspects that we want to get through. So let's really quickly take a few responses in the chat. How is this topic of water scarcity relevant to the lives of your students?
It's a real life problem. Importance of water. It affects them on day-to-day basis. They need
exactly.
to do problem solving. They need to also look at the importance of water needs, natural resources, do a little bit of research. It is one of the SDG goals.
Yeah, it is SDG goals. I was going to say the same thing, Vipasha. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. But then that's all true. But how do we make it personally meaningful, right? We know that it's relevant to them, but how then does this theme become personally meaningful to them?
We use water for almost every activity, like drinking, washing, cooking, cleaning. This is Pushpender Mishra, one of our educators, very insightfully sharing that. Blue is the new god.
Yes.
And it's a global thing. It's again, it's,
Yes.
again, facing that global awareness. It helps us understand the world around them.
Yes.
Okay, so then taking that, you said it. We just answered that question. I mean, this real world context, this directly applies to not only their daily life, but global life.
Yeah.
Okay, so then the hardest question, how do we make this actively engaging?
So let's see, how do we make this actively engaging for our students? These projects utilize various strategies, including water conservation, improved water management practices, and the development of new water harvesting technologies. Examples include rainwater harvesting, watershed management, use of technology to detect and fix leaks. And that was Dr. Kavita Bahaduria. I hope I've said
Yes.
it right. Um, they have to do primary research involving users and then reflect on the then challenges and conduct some water activities. Um, Students should be engaged with those people who work in water management.
Yes, that is a critical piece that we mentioned earlier, bringing in experts, relying on others as sources of information, dispersing or sharing the power of knowledge. And even if students have parents that are in a related field that can come in and be a guest speaker. And then what does it feel like for a student to have their family member come in and be the knowledgeable expert in the room? So when we think about just water scarcity, all of you have come up with really rich ways to make all four aspects of the definition of project-based learning, hooks to get our students abuzz and interested in what may have seemed like a topic that may not necessarily be as sexy for them. But yet, here you did it. But how?
Interestingly, Zachary, we
Yes.
also have another of our educators telling us that it's extremely important that students conduct community meetings, they interview neighborhoods and relatives. So a point that you was just bringing out, and I would like to mention here that this point has been brought out by none other than Mitra Som Saha ma'am, our first expert who has graciously come and joined us today, setting a very true example of learning never stops.
Wow. I just got even more nervous.
Zachary, I was going to mention something too here. As you know, my background is deeply into the early childhood field, and we often wonder if we can do project-based learning with our younger students. I know this applies so well to our intermediate and high school levels. But when we talk about early childhood, water scarcity could actually be something that we engage our early learners with as well, because we can just talk about how many ways we use water, even just in our early days. Are we drinking water? We're taking baths or showers, or we're cooking, like we said earlier, playing outside in the mud and in experimenting and touching in those tactile experiences. So just on this topic alone, we can often see how this can apply in those early childhood, research and engaging and inquiry and all those pieces. So there's always ways to include our early learners. And oftentimes they get left out of project-based learning because we seem to think sometimes it's a little bit too challenging for them. So just on this topic alone, now think about how we can bring this to all levels of learners.
I would also say on this theme, there's a deeply human aspect of it. And our students, even if they show otherwise, they care. They deeply care about themselves, their family members, their friends, etc. And if we can connect that compassion, that kindness, that consideration for others, and link that there may be individuals, or there are individuals throughout the world, throughout their own communities perhaps, that don't have access to water or don't have access to clean, filtered water, immediately there is a sense in the heart that pulls towards, like, well, what do we do? How do we resolve this? How can we provide a solution or propose solutions so that those that don't have can have? Now, we've talked about the what and the why, and we want to move into the how. And there are components of project-based learning that help us understand the how, but I'm also going to give you a little secret and set them up. Our friends, our colleagues at Britannica Education India have helped put together ways in which you can tackle the how. because it can be so overwhelming. How do we do this? How do we have a launch? How do we have the public performance? This feels scary. Zachary, you talked about how it's not totally linear, it's iterative. And I know as a teacher, I start to freak out. I start to get a little nervous, but rest assured, and I'm going to show you the components, and we're going to move relatively quickly because there already are solutions for you. And our friends at Britannica Education India have those solutions, and they're going to talk about them at the end. But we're going to go through a little bit of the how. So what are these components? Let's see the how in real time. The first is, like we mentioned, that complex issue or driving question. It's the heart, right? It can be made up, it can be provided, it can be a real problem, but it's always aligned to learning goals, always, right? Project-based learning is deeply robust, deep learning, and it connects to student interest. We talked a little bit about that, but let's keep going. There's continuous exploration. We had a great participant mention research. Absolutely. Investigation, student-driven research, student-led investigation, group work, right? It forms answers. It forms more questions. It leads to the iterative nature of answer, question, wonder, right? It builds in cross-cultural understanding and responsiveness, and then it invites decision-making, problem solving, maybe problem identification, right? The more we start to learn, the more we start to unpack a complex issue, and planning. We talked about relevance, right? This is where real-world processes, tools, etc., impact, personal connection come into play. 21st century skills, we hear this a lot. I like to just call them life skills, right? Regardless of the century, regardless of the time. This idea of communication, collaboration, critical thinking, a lot of these C words, it's funny how that ends up happening, cross-cultural understanding. They all end up having C as their first letter. But these are life skills, and they have been life skills centuries ago and will continue to be life skills going forward. Creativity is a key component of what students put forth in their public product. How can there be room for learners of all types? Maybe the shyer, more introverted learner and the more gregarious, more demonstrative learner. Is there room for them to show their creativity, let their knowledge, their expertise come out in whatever public product they've decided that they're going to do? And again, autonomy, where's their voice? In our panel discussion a couple of weeks ago, this was a point that I brought up, that often in a more traditional model of education, we give students their voice. We tell them what to think. We tell them what to believe. But actually, project-based learning reminds them that they have a voice. And if you have a complex issue, let's take water scarcity again. What happens when you allow students to come up with a solution or a potential direction for a solution? You don't give them the answer because there isn't a one answer. There are many answers. And what happens to that student when it reignites them with their voice? And what do you see or hear behind that voice? Passion, interest, excitement, direction, and you hear themselves because they have input. We're going to talk about assessments in a second, but that our participant that mentioned rubrics, kiss your brain, because the assessment piece of project-based learning is where you as an educator see just how much learning is happening. This is a rich and dense part of project-based learning. They can be self-created. You can create them. They can be iterative. You can have one that you build upon, a rubric or assessment that you build upon. And we're going to talk about formative and summative. You're going to see just the number of opportunities you have to embed deep assessment, knowing your students in project-based learning. Very much connected. There's room for feedback, reflection, revision, both self-feedback, self-reflection, revision, peer-to-peer, teacher-to-peer, teacher to student, student to teacher, et cetera. And it builds a shared understanding. Plus, if you establish this as a process, it becomes so normal and you see growth just in metacognitive skills. And lastly, that public performance, that piece that we talked about at the end. Again, this may feel like we're driving everything towards the public performance, but really the public performance is the cherry or the glaze on top of a really rich main course that you have designed and created and cultivated and cooked throughout your project-based learning unit. And a little fun fact about public performance is this can be where actually, it should be where you invite those experts in. If your students are creating a PSA, for example, you want to put the people in the room to hear the PSA or hear the business plan or the pitch. Perhaps they will then be convinced and move in their respective profession in a way that can take those ideas from the students and actually activate them in purposeful change or meaningful change directly related to the solution or idea that the students themselves have created. But Pasha, did you want to say something? I know you came off mute there for a second.
I'm learning a lot with you, Zachary, but I do want to mention a couple of comments that have come up on
Please,
the chat.
yes.
Kriti Malik Ma'am says that knowing the students and talking to them really helps. So talk is extremely important. We also have some other very insightful citations here. Passion is the key. Inclusivity is the answer. As teachers, we have to be deeply involved with our learners. We do have one question that has come in and a request. The audience is requesting you to be a little louder, Zachary.
Yes.
And the question that has come in is that how do we involve all students, because some of them may not be that interested in projects?
Very good question. Okay. And let me see. I just adjusted my microphone settings. Does that sound louder?
Loud and clear now.
Lovely. It was pretty high, but sometimes this microphone doesn't always pick up. So thank you for that feedback. That is a very good question, and often really is where the work happens prior to learning. Thinking about what your complex issue or your driving question is, or in the case of working with Britannica Education, if you have a unit that you are working with Britannica Education, thinking about your students and what will hook them, that launch, that very first kickoff is where you as a facilitator have an opportunity to think about what is going to get your students buy-in, and then where along the way they can continue to be hooked. So it's not an easy solution. It's not a quick fix. But again, that iterative nature means you as a teacher get to pop in, re-engage in ways where maybe you see some learners floating away, or you need to make some fixes to the group dynamics. There's some wrinkles that you need to iron out, et cetera. Just because there's a student that might feel a little untethered doesn't mean you can't bring them back. And if you have, which I know you have, and in partnership with Britannica Education India, you can really think about the ways in which it becomes personally meaningful, relevant, and there's that real world context, and then it will become actively engaging.
Great.
Okay.
Do have one more question before we move on,
Yes.
Zachary, and we'll take that question before we get into the other slides. Sunita Miss wants to know that, can you share some important tips on how to challenge and change the slow learners into achievers with project-based learning?
What a great question. Okay, so the first thing that I would say is, and this is, I will use an example, a personal example. Sometimes the slow learner becomes really fast at some point. So keep that in mind, that, and we all know that student who somewhat sits back a little bit and then suddenly everything clicks and they take off. And there are those other learners that's a little bit more of a gradual learning progression. I am a individual who sits back. I get a little nervous in new situations. I'm not quite sure how to engage. This may surprise you, given that I'm, in front of almost 800 viewers right now, but it is very much true. I like to assess the room. I like to assess the group dynamics before I feel comfortable jumping in the pool. So the first thing is, if you really know your students, which I know all of you do, chances are you already know who's going to be the reluctant participant, the person who takes longer to learn information, to process information, digest it, etc. So keep an eye. My first tip is keep an eye on those learners, but don't jump in too quickly. Don't jump in. Sit back for a little bit, because two things have happened, and this is the story I want to share. Often they get it. On those times when things don't connect as quickly, peers step in. The group dynamic, if they're in a group, the group helps each other out and the group uplifts each other. So my first tip is hold back a little bit. My second tip is pay attention to see what's happening in their group. And if there are any members of the group they partner with, they know, they feel comfortable with, because sometimes, actually oftentimes, the students pick each other up. And I think we have time for a real quick story, but I do want to get into the assessment section and make sure that we have 15 minutes at the end. So let me just say this really quickly. When I was working at a school in Hawaii, we had a third grade class that was fascinated with the caterpillars that had taken over the walkway in our central courtyard. There was a bush that they were eating from, and then they would walk across the courtyard, they walk across the walkway, and then they would make their chrysalis in the cubicles of the third grade students. Well, as you can imagine, this is a main thoroughfare. A lot of the caterpillars were getting stepped on. And the third graders felt like, oh no, we need to protect the caterpillars, okay? There was one student in particular who was just struggling with information about life science, life cycle, the life cycle of the butterfly, etc. This teacher, similarly to your comment, this teacher was nervous because they were going to give a pitch to the facilities crew about how to block off the walkway so that they could protect this migration. Almost organically, two students paired up and they started to support each other. And that quote unquote slower learner would now had an active mentor, friend, etc. So that when it came time to do the public pitch to the facilities team, our quote unquote slower learner was the one doing the presenting. And in the middle of the presentation had pulled in their own research and just sparkled. So what I would say is keep an eye. You know your students. Intervene where it absolutely feels necessary, but do your best to sit back and see where students can support each other. Maybe the moments are going to click for learning a little bit later, but that would be my tips and strategies there. Okay, let's get a little interactive and then we'll jump into assessments for our last few minutes. So fill in the blank. Project-based learning is like blank because blank. And I gave you an example. Project-based learning is like a recipe without exact measurements. And we all have those recipes, either from our family members, or we ourselves have created them where we say, you know, it's just like a feel thing because it's messy, creative, and different every time. So have some fun, get a little silly. In the chat, PBL is like blank because blank.
Interesting. We've turned the tables. I've done a lot of fill in the blanks as a student myself. Nice to put the educators to test now. Let's see. So PBL is like hands-on learning, okay? Because, okay, PBL is like crazy because it drives. That's right.
Yes. Yes.
PBL is like hands-on learning because active participation. PBL is like uplifting peers because it's a healthy competition. Okay, interesting one from Manya Goyal. PBL is like a canvas because every student is different with different approaches, different colors, and different outcomes. Nirja Agarwal says joyful learning. PBL is like power because it makes body, mind working together. That is Komal Miss sharing with us. We have Jincy George saying PBL is like real world simulation because it involves students. PBL is like a butterfly because it gives learning wings. That's Shakun Chaudhary sharing with us. That's such a
Kiss
beautiful
your
thought.
brain. Yes.
We have Nupur Gupta telling us PBL is like salt because it adds flavor to learning.
Oh, and
Another
yes.
Oh, I
amazing
like that.
perspective. Yeah. Anupama Mishra says PBL is like ocean because it has many solutions.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay, so Lori, did you have anything you wanted to say? I
Oh,
noticed you came off mute.
I was just going to say it's like going on a road trip without a map.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. You're not sure which turn you're going to take, but it always finds something interesting.
Lori was wondering if anybody would come with that. That's why I put our little friend here with his wings and his arm up in the air. It is a little like flight without a clear understanding of where your destination is, or maybe you know where your destination is, but you're not sure the flight plan. Absolutely. Okay. And now we're coming towards our last section, and this is going to be relatively brief, but you have all of these resources in your resource document. So we're going to skim the surface here, send you off with tremendous tools and resources, but this comes back to the idea of project-based learning not just being quote unquote fun. It is fun, but there's deep, rich learning, and you can find ways to document, track, and share what is actually being learned throughout project-based learning, and that's through assessments. So we have, obviously, with project-based learning assessments, we have two main categories. We have assessments about the individual and assessments about the group. And in there, we have, obviously, formative and summative assessments for both categories. So some examples of some formative assessments are a reflection journal or a design thinker's journal, wink, wink, nod, which when you think about a reflection journal, obviously there's room for reflection, but that becomes a living document that actually you don't have to do much with. You can just show what students have thought, etc. You don't have to create anything other than that journal. We have checklists, peer reviews, exit tickets, learning logs, surveys, conferences, concept maps, draft submissions. All of these are examples among many of formative assessments that we build upon along the way to show deep, rich learning that can happen in project-based learning. Well, let's talk about some summative products. The idea of summative being, what we think of at the end, at the culmination, formative being along the way, summative now at the end. What do we have here? We have written products, a research report, letters, blogs, etc. Constructed projects, models, right? Machines. Think of that example that I shared about the coffee can. That would be a constructed project, this idea of simple machines. Now, that wasn't project-based learning, let me just say, but that idea of students building something and then having to exhibit it at the end. Presentation products, a sales pitch, a debate, a play. I just led this training in East St. Louis for a group of high school teachers. And at the end of our time together, this group of adults wrote a play and gave us a scene related to the United States Constitution. And they gave us a 7-minute representation of that play. It was fabulous. Planning products, right? Proposal, blueprint, business plan, and any kind of media or technology products, slideshow, website, video. These are all examples of the type of summative product ideas that can correlate with summative assessments to help you understand what your students have learned. And then how do we build these assessments? These are the 4 ways we identify what those learning outcomes are and how that aligns with domains of learning. Again, we're connecting with the learning standards that we mentioned earlier. Then we think about how could we choose the assessment type that matches what we want to know about our students. And then there's that word, rubrics. So how do we create rubrics? Oh my gosh, this can feel incredibly overwhelming. Well, we gave you some help. In that resource document, all of these links to rubric generation are there to help you get started. And I also tell you a little clue. For those of you that are more adventurous and want to try working with AI, There are ways in which you can put into your AI prompt what you're looking for, the type of rubric that you want, and it will generate it, and then you can then modify it from there. So for those of you who get a little stuck at the beginning and just need somewhere to go, AI can help you maybe in this regard, as long as you put in the prompt things like the demographics of your student, your theme, what you hope to assess, the various categories, etc. A great resource, but all of these are in that resource document. And we're at the very end of my time with you. But before we do, a quick glow and grow. In the chat, a glow, something you're excited to try, like just you're glowed up, right? Or a grow, a question or area you want to keep working on.
So, Dr. Linnert, I have to say, I see a lot of glow for you already. Thank you for such an amazing session. But we would really like to see all of you tell us what is it that really excites you right now. Global challenges, development of the child, working with slow learners, then a few more glow moments for you.
Too kind.
Inclusivity, collaboration, working in groups with students, including PBL in our teaching learning process.
Yes.
Connection between different subjects, for sure. Making children think out of the box and involving children for each and every topic. Engagement of all the kids, working with future achievers. Interesting. Authenticity in learning. Better relationships between teacher and students. So a lot of glow moments happening,
Wonderful.
right? Yeah.
And I know as a learner myself, sometimes the grow comes later as I'm digesting and thinking about all of the information I've received. And I know we threw a lot at you, some really high level ideas, foundations of project-based learning, the components, et cetera. Sometimes those grows, those little seeds, they're there. They just haven't sprouted just yet. So I encourage you to continue to think about, in the case of project-based learning, what are some questions or areas you want to keep working on, and how potentially Britannica Education India can partner with you on those grows. So first, I want to say thank you so much for inviting me to join over 800 of you in wherever you are in your spaces. It has been a treat to be a part of this. Vipasha, I cannot thank you enough. And I just want to share, on the US side, these were the three individuals, all deeply trained in project-based learning, who all have certifications in project-based learning that created this course. Project-based learning is a best practice across the world. Project-based learning, like Vipasha kicked off and then we mentioned, it's not a fad, right? This is foundational learning that has been at the core of humanity for time. And when we think about Britannica, Britannica is also a global brand, and we strive to uplift best practices across the world. And project-based learning is a best practice. And then in our respective markets, we try to think about what that looks like in our respective market context, which is why we brought in the national education policy, et cetera. So with that, I want to kick it back to Vipasha, and I will stop sharing my screen. But before
Zachary?
that, yes.
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead, please.
Anything, any last words of wisdom on project-based learning?
Well, I'm going to try to say this, and I probably will mess it up, but I do hope you give me tremendous grace if I say Firmilte hen to all of you.
So that's amazing. Yeah, you were right. You were bang on. That's our answer.
I practiced.
Thank you so much, Dr. Linnert, for this amazing workshop. We've had a lot of glow moments for you on the chat, obviously, and it was definitely a very informative session. And while, yes, learning never stops, but we do want all of our attendees here to pause as we're about to make a big announcement for all of you. There were a lot of questions I saw during your workshop, Dr. Linnert, which were around how do we actually implement project-based learning in our schools? How do we define the efficiency of it? And I'm proud to say that I have somebody here who's going to give you exactly that answer. We love building curiosity at Britannica, and with the same spirit, I want to now invite my amazing colleague, Pragya Pandita, Head of Academics and Product at Britannica Education, and she'll be sharing with you what's been brewing at Britannica.
Thank you, Vipasha. As excited learners, we at Britannica have also been learning from all of you, our esteemed partners here in India. And we have heard you ask the most pertinent question: what do our learners really need? The answer was loud and clear. Learners today need more than just content. They need skills, experiences, opportunities to apply what they have learned to the real world situations. We are standing at the heart of transformation. We are seeing a paradigm shift in the education system from what do you know to how can you apply this knowledge to real life situations. That is where Britannica Build comes in, a one stop solution to address these needs. And today I am excited to introduce our first step in this journey, Britannica's project based learning. We are excited to bring you an experiential approach that engages learners in solving real world global challenges using the design thinking process, Britannica's design thinking process. Think of it this way: instead of just reading about the impact of waste, learners will design solutions to reduce waste generated in their school and communities. Instead of only learning about business models, they will actually develop real world enterprise skills by creating and selling different products. And to top it off, you have Britannica's project based learning program to guide you every step of the way, from identifying projects to embedding them in the classroom settings while adopting design thinking, making your learners future ready. Britannica becomes your partner in the journey of transformative learning for educators and learners, from skill building to a global platform of recognition. Britannica PBL is something you don't want to miss. Let's take a look at this short video to know more.
What if learning wasn't about memorizing answers, but solving the world's real problems? In project-based learning, learners become explorers, inventors, and change makers, solving real-life challenges with curiosity and creativity. While traditional projects come at the end, PBL starts with a real-world problem and guides the entire learning journey. It's not about ticking boxes, it's about unlocking ideas, building together, and thinking deeper. From plastic-free campaigns and green rooftop models to solar-powered solutions, every project connects to the Sustainable Development Goals. Global goals come alive through local action, like XYD, who turned discarded floral waste into incense sticks, proving that small ideas can spark big change. With every challenge, students don't just answer, they become inquirers, thinkers who care. PBL nurtures the skills we need for the world we are shaping. With project-based learning, every question sparks possibility. So, what will you imagine, build, and solve next?
Well, this is just the beginning. I proudly announce that at Britannica, we are committed to supporting you as you bring this vision to life in your schools. Over to you, Vipasha.
Exciting, exciting, exciting. I'm really looking forward to all our 800 attendees who've been with us, actually 800 plus attendees who are here with us. We will be working with all of you to bringing project-based learning live in your classrooms. So with all hands on deck to make learning experiential, firstly, I would like to thank all of you for joining us today. The link to the feedback form will now be posted on the chat. I request everyone to please take a minute to fill out this form. Only those who fill the form will be given the certificates. The certificates are automatically sent once you submit the form. We'd also take this moment to thank Dr. Zachary Linnert, Ms. Laurie Lynch, and Ms. Pragya Pandita joining us here today to give us such a wonderful workshop, so many learning insights, and announcing the launch of Britannica's project-based learning. We're excited to build this future with you and your learners. Now, before we call it a day, I'd like to close this session with words from our Honorable Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi ji, who in his Mann Ki Baat had once said, and I quote, "The more we give importance to skill development, the more competent will be our youth." To building skills, one skill set at a time. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful evening. Before you drop, don't forget to fill the feedback form. And while we're waiting, let's all of us smile for a Kodak moment. Thank you. Once again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining this workshop. It's amazing to see all of you so eager to learn, continuously improvising, and being a part of this shift that we're bringing about to every school here in India and globally. The feedback form link is posted on the chat. Please take a moment to fill the feedback, share your feedback with us, and also sign up for your certificates. Once again, thank you everyone for your time. We hope you have a lovely, lovely evening and an amazing weekend ahead, though we still have one more day to go. But tomorrow is going to be Friday because now we have Britannica's project-based learning live for all of our schools, educators, leaders, teachers to start adopting. Thank you so much, everyone. We hope you've all got the feedback link and we'll be closing this session now. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Have a lovely